A NASCAR executive says to expect more streaming in the next TV contract. Practice and qualifying are expected to return next season. Sort of. And the Xfinity series is changing its logo. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric. Welcome to Out of the Groove. I hope you all have had a fantastic week. We've had a lot of special episodes and announcements the last few days. We had Jeremy Clements on the show yesterday. Of course, the Out of the Groove logo will be on the 51 car this weekend at Las Vegas. Here's a little glimpse at what the real car will look like. Ooh, complete with the red spoiler, splitter, and windshield banner. You see the Out of the Groove logo right there on the door. Pretty excited about that. We also talked to the CEO of Lineout earlier this week, and he gave y'all an early look at the next-gen prototypes, or the first shots. But today we are finally going to catch up on all of the big news stories from this week, heading into Las Vegas this weekend. But before we get to that, this episode is sponsored by Jockey. There is only one Jockey made in the USA since 1876. They sponsored the Cup Series race weekend at Road America earlier this year. That was a good time. And as you can see, they have sent me some of their super comfortable premium cotton white t-shirts made from cotton grown and sewn in America. When you support Jockey, you're supporting American workers who've been crafting comfort since 1876. Remember, there's only one Jockey. Visit jockey.com. That link is down in the description for the quality and comfort you deserve. Really appreciate Jockey supporting Out of the Groove and supporting racing this year. Now, we've got a lot of news to catch up on, lots to react to. Let's start with this. The Xfinity series is changing its logo, for next season at least. Apparently the entire Xfinity brand is switching from the traditional red color that we've seen to purple. They posted this earlier this week, but yes, the 2022 NASCAR Xfinity series logo will be purple. Purple is my favorite color. No, but seriously, I actually do like the color purple quite a bit. I've long been a fan of purple race cars. I don't know what it is about purple. I just really like the color purple. So I think this new logo, as you can see, looks pretty sharp. I like it a lot. The only thing I don't like about it is that it kind of ruins the consistency we've had. You know, this year we've got blue windshield banners for the trucks, sponsored by Camping World, makes sense. Red for the Xfinity cars and yellow for the Cup Series cars. Blue, red, yellow. Those are the colors of the NASCAR logo. Like you see on my wall right there. With Xfinity introducing purple, doesn't really go. I mean, purple's a beautiful color. I'm fine with it. I think purple banners and splitters and spoilers will look really cool next year, but if there is any complaint I have, it's that it ruins that pattern, that consistency. But anyway, yeah, Xfinity's going purple. There you go. That's for next year, I should make clear. I know the timing's kind of strange, but this season, everything will be red still. 2022, purple. Now, let's talk NASCAR TV ratings for just a moment, because they've taken a positive turn in recent weeks. Adam Stern reported yesterday, and I guess this is actually coming from NASCAR. NASCAR says there's now been 5 straight Cup Series races that have earned a year-over-year increase in viewership, the longest streak since 2013. This comes after Saturday's Bristol night race reportedly drew in 2.2 million viewers to NBCSN, which is up from 2.13 million viewers for the same race last year. Not a huge increase, but an increase nonetheless. That's 5 straight races now that have seen increase in viewership from 2020 to 2021. That's, you know, any news like this is good news. I mean, these all have been pretty small gains. I think the largest gain in the last few weeks was the Daytona race, which saw maybe a little over 100,000 more viewers tune in this year than last year, so that's pretty cool. I'm not going to oversell it. I'm not going to get too hyped up, but it is nice to see TV ratings going a positive direction. There's a good amount of interest to begin these playoffs, and I think that's a very positive thing for the industry. Now, I bring up TV ratings, well, 1, because it's nice to talk about some positive news, but 2, because it leads into this other story from this past week. There's an article on awfulannouncing.com written by Philip Bupp, and it featured an interview with NASCAR's VP of Media and Productions, Brian Herbst. He talked about the future of NASCAR TV broadcasts and what role streaming may play here in a few years, and I'll read a couple quotes that I thought stood out, because I think that initial headline that, oh, NASCAR is going to go to streaming in the future, I think that immediately is going to turn some people off, and I want to actually go beyond the headline and give you all the real facts to maybe reassure some of you. But anyway, here's some of what, again, NASCAR VP of Media and Productions Brian Herbst said in this article. For us as a sport, we're a little bit more sensitive to shifting premier content over to those digital direct-to-consumer platforms, he's talking about streaming, just because the penetration level isn't as high right now in terms of platforms. It's really just a numbers game for us. For broadcast TV, penetration, that's 120 to 125 million homes. Cable TV is 75 million, and the direct-to-consumer platforms are somewhere in the 15 million range. So let me translate some of what he's saying right there. That first number, he's talking about NBC and Fox. When races are on big NBC, big Fox, they're reaching over 120 million US households. When races are on FS1 or NBCSN, that's cable TV, then they're only reaching about 75 million households because there are a lot of families, a lot of people in the United States that have cut cable, that do not pay for cable, and therefore don't easily get to see those races. That 15 million number he gives is closer to the number of people they believe are actively streaming, or that they would reach if they were on a streaming platform like, say, Peacock, which is owned by NBC. So there you have a NASCAR executive admitting that if NASCAR were to switch all broadcasts to streaming, like tomorrow, they would be reaching far fewer households. And we all know NASCAR is about the numbers. They're about quantity. They want big, big numbers. They're constantly making schedule changes to try and get the largest TV audience possible. That's why we have so many 2 and 3 p.m. starts this year. They want those West Coast viewers, as many as they can possibly attract. NASCAR cares very deeply about the numbers, and they're not shy about this. So there you have a NASCAR executive admitting that there are less people, far less people currently actively streaming than still watching traditional cable or that have network TV in their house. You know, they're all about reaching the widest and largest potential audience. So then he went on to say even more. The teams sell against the 3 million viewers that tune into every Sunday afternoon, to the extent that if that's compromised in any way via a direct-to-consumer model, against streaming, that's something we have to take into consideration. It's a balancing act. There's financial stuff in the equation, but the viewership piece, long-term, is critical for us as a sport, so we wrestle with that. There you have a NASCAR executive admitting that if NASCAR were to move races off of broadcast, off of cable TV, into streaming exclusively, and the viewership numbers tanked, that's something they would not want to do, because he brings up there that race teams, of course, are a huge part of the entire racing business. FedEx pays Joe Gibbs Racing millions of dollars every year because they expect to see their car, their logo, in front of a large TV audience on a weekly basis, 2, 3, 4, 5 million viewers. If NASCAR went exclusively to streaming and those races only got 400,000 viewers, FedEx would expect to pay a lot less to Joe Gibbs for that kind of exposure, which would hurt Joe Gibbs Racing. And the same goes for every team, from the biggest teams like Joe Gibbs Racing, Hendrick Motorsports, to the smallest teams. So there you have a NASCAR executive clarifying that if that business model was going to be compromised, if they knew a move to streaming would kill the TV audience in a major, major way and hurt the race teams and their sponsors and their exposure, that's something NASCAR would likely not do. So before you rush out and say, oh my gosh, every race in 2025 is going to be on Peacock or Paramount Plus or Disney Plus, all the pluses. When is an Out of the Groove Plus coming out? Gotta hop on the bandwagon, figure that one out. But I would say don't worry. I think what this article proves is that it's going to be a gradual shift. You know, the IndyCar 2022 TV schedule was just released, and you know, they have 17 races on their schedule, far fewer than the NASCAR Cup Series, but of those 17, they got a pretty good deal. 14 of those races will be on main NBC. One race, the race at Toronto next year, will be on Peacock exclusively. So IndyCar does have one of their 17 races that will be exclusive to a streaming platform, but to kind of balance that, they have 14 races, more than they have now, on network TV. I think that's a pretty good trade-off for the IndyCar series. Again, though, that IndyCar schedule is for 2022. We're talking about a NASCAR schedule for 2025, you know, several years down the line. So things will change, things will evolve, but fans are going to read the headline and say, oh gosh, NASCAR is going to streaming. That's going to kill the TV viewership. What are they thinking? It's going to ruin the sport. And when you actually read the quotes from Brian Herbst, it sounds like it will be a much more gradual and careful shift. He talks about in the article, maybe there'll be some practice sessions or qualifying sessions that are exclusively streamed. Maybe the occasional Xfinity or truck race will be exclusive to streaming. But again, he admits that NASCAR doesn't want to do anything that will radically hurt the TV viewership for a given race and hurt race teams' ability to sell sponsorship at the price they need to sell sponsorship at. So I took away from that article nothing really new. I think we all can look at the writing on the wall. Less and less people are signing up for cable pretty much every year, and streaming, internet, all that seems to be on the rise. So 3 or 4 years from now, the idea of a NASCAR race, maybe not a cup race, but an Xfinity or truck race being exclusively on a streaming platform may not seem that far-fetched and may seem a whole lot more reasonable in a few years. But anyway, I just wanted to share that article with y'all because I thought a lot of people were maybe overreacting to it on social media, at least. I guess that's what social media is built for, so I shouldn't have been too surprised, but I wanted to share my thoughts really quick and read more in depth into the article than the headline initially indicated. One last thing though, I will say, while the current TV contracts don't expire until 2024 or after the 2024 season, I think NASCAR is currently having discussions with potential TV partners, existing TV partners, and maybe even potential streaming partners. I saw a headline yesterday that said Netflix may be interested in picking up Formula One's live live race TV rights in the near future when they become available once again. So I think NASCAR is right now having conversations with a ton of different partners, even though it's a couple years. We're talking about something that's a couple years down the line. And, I think that's maybe interesting why NASCAR would put out that information, that, hey, we've had 5 straight weeks with increases in viewership. Look at how valuable our product is. I think it's all a game. It's all a game. It's all business. So I don't think that's necessarily a coincidence. But anyway, let me know what you think down in the comments below. Still a few years down the line, so nothing that's particularly imminent. I think the world will look very different in 3 or 4 years than it does now. Quite honestly, things change fast. Anyway, last big story that I want to talk about today. Oh boy, this one riled me up a little yesterday. I've calmed down since then. Bob Pockers from Fox Sports tweeted a couple new details about NASCAR's plan to reintroduce practice and qualifying at most, if not all, events in 2022. And let's say it's a mixed bag at best. Let's see what Bob Pockers said. Replying to a question about practice and qualifying on Twitter, Bob Pockers tweeted, "Teams expect practice and qualifying in Cup next year. Sounds like NASCAR is leaning towards short 20 to 30 minute practice with no adjustments allowed underneath the car and then straight into qualifying. Then impound for the majority of events, but some will have another practice. Still being finalized." He then replied to another question saying, while things are still being finalized, the idea would be to do practice and qualifying in one block of time, but if you allowed significant adjustments, then you would need to tech the cars between practice and qualifying. That's Bob Pockers trying to explain on NASCAR's behalf, at least, the rationale for holding a practice session that actually doesn't allow the teams to make any major adjustments to the car. So here's my issue. A 20 to 30 minute practice session where the teams are not allowed to make any major adjustments to the car, that's not a true practice session. That's like a warm-up session. That's like if you go to a dirt track race, a dirt race, a lot of times I've been to a few World of Outlaws races now, and what they'll do before like a heat race, they'll roll all the cars out, in the order that they qualified or that they're going to start in. They'll run around the track a couple times, just caution, pace, and then they'll do a couple hot laps. They'll go full speed and just for like 2 or 3 laps, and then they'll slow back down behind the pace car, line back up, and then they'll go green for the race. This is the equivalent of that. This is the NASCAR equivalent of a few hot laps before going green for the actual event. So 20 minutes of track time, not allowed to make any major adjustments to the car. 20 minutes of track time, really the only point of those 20 minutes is to make sure the car doesn't spontaneously burst into flames or something like that. That's really all you're there to do in those 20 minutes, it sounds like. Josh Bilicki, NASCAR Cup Series driver, said basically the same thing. He tweeted, "While it'll be nice to have practice back so we can get acclimated with the new cars, the no adjustments underneath part makes no sense. Let's give the teams completely new cars and then not allow them to make adjustments during practice." So he seems a bit perplexed by this idea. And again, it has not been finalized. As Bob Pockers notes, it could still be edited. Nothing has been officially announced by NASCAR yet, but if what he reports there turns out to be the case, if for the vast majority of races next season we get a 20-minute practice followed immediately by qualifying, followed by then impounding the car so they cannot be touched or worked on again until the race actually starts, to me that's not much better than what we have now. I am happy that qualifying is returning. It'll probably be, single car qualifying where, fastest cars get rewarded and certain cars may be better in qualifying than they are during the race. So I like that dynamic. I'm glad that's returning. So I'm not going to say this is all bad or terrible, but that part is good. The practice part is the part I have the problem with, because a 20-minute practice where you're not allowed to make any major changes underneath the car or anything like that, to me that's not a real practice session. That's a warm-up, which still is better than what we have now at most races, which is no practice, no seat time, no track time before the green flag waves on Sunday. So it's better than that. I will say that it's better than that. Even though I'm complaining, it is better than what we have this season, but I'm still not a huge fan of it. I've said for months on this show that my hopes for 2022 would be that we get 1 hour of normal traditional practice, even 45 minutes, 50 minutes, a happy hour of practice followed by single car qualifying, and preferably not all on the same day. I didn't want to see, cup cars on track Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I can agree with shortening the weekend a bit, maybe practice and qualifying are Saturday before the Xfinity race, and then the cup race is Sunday. I think we could split up something like that. But now, because they're running practice and qualifying back to back, and they don't want to have to take time to tech the cars in between, it sounds like there are going to be more one-day shows next year. It sounds like they're going to be a lot. I wouldn't be surprised if we'll see a lot of, cup practice and qualifying Sunday morning, and then the race Sunday afternoon. That seems to be where we're headed, which, if I'm a fan camped out over the course of a weekend, it may not be the worst thing in the world, assuming trucks and Xfinity are there as well, because, truck race maybe Friday night, or even if trucks aren't there, you get Xfinity Saturday. They'll have their hour of practice and qualifying in the morning, and then their race in the afternoon, and then Sunday, cup in the morning, cup in the afternoon. At least you'll still have a lot more track time than at least you do now. Not as much as in years past when there were 2 or 3 practice sessions per series, plus qualifying. Maybe that was overboard, I'll admit that, but I feel like next year is maybe not quite enough. It's not quite as much as I was hoping for. Effectively, it's still gonna be whatever you unload with, that's what you got for the race. There's not much you can do at the track during the weekend. And I think that devalues the crew chief's role, the crew's role in preparing and working on the car throughout the weekend. It devalues the driver in some ways. I think some of the best drivers in history got to be the best because they were really good at communicating effectively with their teams, what they feel in the car, what's good, what's wrong, what they need to be better at a certain track or in a certain spot. This is a major element of competition that has been effectively gone for the last year and a half, 2 years, and isn't really going to truly return next season. It's all a cost-saving measure, and I feel like we've said that about a lot of things the last couple of years. I understand the sport needed to downsize. The business model was not sustainable 2 years ago. It's not sustainable this year, but with the next gen car, it's supposed to be more sustainable. We're seeing new owners get involved in the sport. We're seeing a lot of new interest in the NASCAR Cup Series especially, but we're also seeing a lot of costs being cut across the board, downsizing. Teams are getting smaller. Certain jobs are becoming unnecessary these days. One-day shows, less content at the track each weekend for the fans. Now that Cup Series drivers really, at least all this year and probably for much of next year, only show up on Sundays, fans who camp out, who hang out at the track all 3 days, who hope to see their driver at like a sponsorship booth or at an appearance here or there. There's fewer and fewer opportunities to meet your favorite drivers. I understand we're in a pandemic, and of course drivers want to keep themselves as safe as possible anyways, and that will probably still be a thing in 2022. So there's a lot of conflicting factors here for sure, but at the center of all this is saving the team's money. And usually I'm all for it. I'm all for saving the team's money. That's been one of the most redeeming qualities. It's probably the most redeeming quality about the next gen car, at least thus far. But at some point, these cost-cutting measures are going to start getting in the way of the viewing experience. They're going to start taking away from the element of competition. I mean, they already have a little bit. The spec cars next year, that takes away one element of competition. Teams at the shops aren't building their own cars completely from scratch and engineering them their own way. That element of competition is pretty much going away next year already. Now we're losing another one if practice really isn't practice now all of next season. At some point, we're losing too many. We're losing too many competitive elements. Some are necessary. You can argue the spec chassis were necessary to get costs under control and save some of these teams and introduce new teams and new competitive cars into the sport. You can argue that. I don't see how you can argue a few extra sets of tires for practice, a few more miles on your engine, maybe a night at the hotel for a lot of your crew guys on the road. When we're talking about a sport where teams willingly spend $10 million apparently on a charter, we're arguing about a couple extra sets of tires and an extra night at a hotel. I mean, I know I don't own a NASCAR team. I don't run a budget. I understand it's all expensive, and any little bit of money that can be saved is, I'm sure, welcomed by most of the teams. But again, at some point, I think the money you're saving by not doing a certain thing isn't worth losing an element of competition within your sport. And not having a true practice session next year, to me, devalues a crucial driver skill, a crucial crew chief skill and team skill, communicating throughout the weekend, evaluating, getting better from Saturday or Friday to Sunday. That has been effectively gone all year and most of last year, and it sounds like it's not coming back in any major way in 2022. That's disappointing. I'm glad that at least there's some track time before race time next year. I'm glad there's some practice, and I'm glad that qualifying is returning. I don't want to gloss over that. I think it's great that qualifying will be back next year. I'm double thumbs up happy about that, but I wish we were getting a full-fledged practice session, just one happy hour, normal happy hour with all the adjustments in the world at team's disposal. I wish we were getting that next season. And if Bob Pockrass's tweets turn out to be true, again, have not been finalized, it sounds like that's not what we're getting next season. So I'm a little disappointed about that. Leave a comment down below. I hope I explained it pretty well, at least gave you guys my perspective of the issue. Feel free to chime in the comments below. I look forward to seeing your responses, but that's gonna do it for this episode. I know we rambled and rambled today. That's what happens when you don't catch up on the news for the better part of a week. Appreciate y'all watching. Be sure to subscribe if you're new to the channel. As always, a huge thank you to my amazing Patreon supporters as well. I couldn't do this show without your tremendous support each and every month. I greatly appreciate it. Not sure if I'll have a video up tomorrow. If I don't, be sure to keep an eye on that 51 Saturday night at Las Vegas, Out of the Groove, riding with Jeremy Clements. Very excited about that. I'll be at the Speedway Saturday and Sunday, so if you're out in Las Vegas this weekend and you see me, come say hi. Hope it's a fun weekend. I'm sure it will be. Thanks for watching all. Thank you for the support. I'll see you in the next video.